Showing you the lineup. None of the players are out yet. We are yet to start. If you're watching this on the Eurosport player as opposed to on Facebook Live, and by the way, if you are on Facebook Live, we've got Lewis Ward, the World Snooker social media supremo. He's going to be firing the questions at us. So get in touch. We want this to be as interactive as possible. This is a huge day for snooker. Tomorrow will be, of course, as well. But this is the first session. It's their chance to get involved. And yours as well. So get in touch with us on Facebook. If you're watching via the Eurosport player, Table 2 has isolated coverage on the player. Table 3 has isolated coverage, or their third feed is ours. And I'm delighted to say that the former world number 3, Neil Foulds, is with me to enjoy every ball in every match. And Neil, having performed at the very highest level, you, more than anybody else in this room, will be aware of what all these players are feeling right now.
Yeah, I mean, this round has always existed, but not quite in the way we do it now. We used to be up at Telford, we used to play the last qualifier, and as much as I love snooker, it was pretty horrible to be playing in it. You just didn't want to lose, and the same applies now. I mean, it's tantalisingly just a few hundred yards to the Crucible from here, and a lot of these guys who've not played there know exactly what it would mean to some point tomorrow book their place in the round and in the draw on Thursday morning. So, there's so much to look forward to, and so many nerves around.
It's brutal, isn't it? But from the outsider's point of view, we're going to be in the little commentary box about 5.5 paces that way. We won't miss anything, I promise. So from our perspective, it's great, but it is such enormous pressure on the players.
We've already seen Joe Perry go out. Now, he's been involved in the Crucible for years. He doesn't have to qualify very often. Now his season is over, so his cue's away. It's going to be an odd experience for him. There's going to be the combination of guys trying to get there for the first time and players who are so used to being involved for the 17 days or part of it down the road at the Crucible, who are going to miss out, and that leads to huge disappointments. I mean, obviously the sun comes up every morning still, but for a couple of days you feel like the world is over.
And I mean, if you look at a player like Mark Williams, Mark Williams was devastated with the way he played on home turf at the Welsh Open. Then he almost beats Selby to the China Open. Brilliant run to the final. And only came through yesterday, 10-9. He's got a match later on today against Stuart Carrington. But even coming here off the back of a great run in China, no result can be taken for granted.
He's had a pretty horrible draw. Zhao Jintong, his first round opponent, was a match for anybody. He could have qualified, and he beat him. And I watched some of the match yesterday where he was a 10-9 winner against Liam Highfield. Liam Highfield made a 132 break to go 9-all, but Mark showed his class. He switched on for the decider. I don't think Stuart Carrington's an easy match either, but what would it mean to Mark to play at the Crucible? A lot more than if he wasn't able to get there, so it's a big couple of days for him.
Huge. So Mark Williams is coming up later on. The first session of the second round of matches is at 5 p.m. We are literally just a couple of minutes away from getting going here on the opening session, the first part of Judgment Day. So Neil, let's have a look at some of the matches we've got coming up today. Luca Brecel against Dominic Dale. Now, Luca hasn't gone beyond the last 32 this year, although he had a great run in the quarterfinals of the UK. And Dominic, he's gone deep at the Crucible before. That is a huge match.
It is, and Luca's played at the Crucible before as well, so he'll be looking to get there again. I think he's an upcoming talent. He's still only a very young man. People forget that, so there's a lot at stake there. I personally just think that Luca might come through that match. He had a real hard game with Joe Swale last night, though, which put Swale off the tour for the second time. So as long as he's recovered from that, that'll be a very interesting match.
Holty against Ebden. I had breakfast with Michael Holt this morning. His wedding's coming up in June. He was so engrossed in the challenge to come from Peter Ebden. He didn't even know. I was sort of saying to him, how exciting it'll be on Friday that all 32 players who've qualified will be on this red carpet. He didn't know anything about it. He hasn't allowed himself to look beyond anything than taking on Peter Ebden. That is a really hard match to call. Nobody
looks beyond Peter Ebden, do they? Let's be honest about it, because he's so tough to beat. You don't think any further than having to endure a best of 19 match with him. And maybe if he comes through it, then he'll think about the rest of the world and how it's going to continue. But that's a very, very interesting match. Holt's favourite, but Ebden, I think, is playing very well. He beat Jack Lisowski in the previous round, and by the odd frame. It tells you how well he's playing again, Ebden. He pops up every now and then, doesn't he, still?
He does, and he's a man who absolutely thrives in the long frame format. Mark King against Xiao Guodong. Kingy leads the head-to-heads there 2-1, last 16 in Germany. quarter-finals of the Grand Prix, but of course his crowning moment was when he won in Northern Ireland, and he'll be desperate to finish this season by at the very least getting through to the first round proper at the Crucible.
Yeah, I think that's another tough game for him though. Zhao Guodong, as you say, good player, very talented player, ranking tournament finalist, but Mark King has got that ranking tournament under his belt, the Northern Ireland Open, so I'm sure there's a little bit more of a swagger about him these days.
Our feature match, Gary Wilson against Michael White. Gary Wilson, who secured his first career 147 in the first round of the qualifiers here, so he's in cracking form.
I'm a little surprised he's never played at the Crucible before. Looked it up and he hasn't. Michael White, as we know, knocked Selby out a couple of years ago. White's favourite, but Wilson with that 147 has to be playing very well, and he came from behind to win his next match against Peter Lyons as well.
Bing Chao and Ersan Bakker, neither man has made it to the Crucible before. In fact, I think we just went through our stats before coming out here to chat on air. We've got 11 potential debutants, but of course, with Bing Chao and Ersan Bakker, we're guaranteed at least one from that match alone. Yeah,
Yan Bingtao, he'll be, if he does get through, the only man born in the year 2000 ever to play at the Crucible should he get there. He was only 17 the other day. Alexander Ersan Bakker, what a story, Swiss player, won the European Under-21s recently, and I think he's playing very well again. So I think Bingtao will win that game, but if Ersan Bakker won it, that would be a wonderful story.
Udaloo and Martin Gould. I mean, Martin Gould's had some big matches at the Crucible in recent years, and as we were saying again just before we came on air, he was a bit unlucky last year that he drew Ding so early on at the Crucible.
Yeah, no one wanted Ding in the first round. He was the qualified. No one wanted to play because he's better than that, and of course he got to the final. His match for Martin was a close one. Martin's got some very good and bad memories of the Crucible. Of course, we go back to the time he lost to Neil Robertson from 11-5 up, but you know, he'll be favourite to beat Udaloo there.
All right, here's a guy with a brilliant name. He's only 21 years of age. We will get this right. But here we go. Akani Songserm Sawad knocking out Joe Perry. What an absolutely huge upset that was.
Very, very interesting player. I watched him. He's got an extraordinary method of going into the shot, and it's something we'll obviously see some of him playing later on. He's got his own style of play. He's never off the practice table. I sometimes think that the matches get in the way of the practice because he's always on the practice table, even if he loses. His dad follows him around with bags of shopping to keep the proteins up and everything. He's an extraordinary young Thai lad, and I really wish him all the best. But he's playing David Grace, someone I've got a soft spot for, and that's another story should he get through, because David Grace, I really like him. He's lost stones in weight, and he's actually really playing well.
And who could forget that incredible run he had on home turf in Yorkshire?
UK.
David Amazing Grace at the UK Champs. Rod Lawler, still grinding it out, still pushing for a place at the Crucible. And Jimmy Robertson, I tell you what, Jimmy Robertson, I was having a look on Q Tracker, he's had 13 half-century breaks in the two matches so far, so he's playing quite well. And
of course he would have been pleased not to be playing Alan McManus, who Rod Lawler beat, because last year Alan beat Jimmy in the final qualifier. So he'd probably be pleased to play Rod Lawler. Rod Lawler and Alan McManus. Alan's my pal. That was pretty tough watching last night, some of that, and there were some few people could hardly watch the match because Rod isn't the quickest. It was pretty grisly stuff, but you know, there's so much at stake. You've just got to get over the line. And Rod has been reborn in the last 3 or 4 years. He's not played at the Crucible for 21 years, by the way. That would smash all records, which is currently 13 years gap. 21 years, 96 the last time he played. So if he wins that match, he breaks all records.
Well, that would be incredible. What you're saying is that match last night was one for the purists. Well, we'll be hoping we get some really high quality matches. There is sure to be so much drama. Just a couple of minutes before we start our live coverage, and as I said, we've got cameras on every single table. But just before we get going here for the last round of qualifiers at Ponds Forge, Lewis Ward, having cycled all the way from Essex to the Crucible, has been out and about reminding us just why we're so glad to be back here at the spiritual home of snooker at the Crucible.
It's now just days to go until the world's sporting attention turns to this space, the Crucible Theatre, for the Betfred World Snooker Championship. In the meantime, for the past week, for the qualifying rounds going for Ponds Forge, just behind us over there, and we've got some really exciting news for sports fans all over the world this year. For the first time ever, alongside Eurosport players, we're going to be bringing you the final round of qualifying live on Facebook. That's going to be a special show called Judgment Day, which we've had in the past, but this time unprecedented coverage of all tables featuring Neil Foles and Rob Walker. Make sure you tune in to Facebook tomorrow for all the information.
So Neil Foulds has hot-footed it into the commentary position. The action has started. Who is going to be joining the top 16 in the draw live on Thursday morning? We're live on Facebook. Hello also, if you're watching on Eurosport Player, we can give you a quick flick round there. Mark King and Zhao Guodong, they've all started the early stages. There's the force, Peter Ebdon, the 2002 world champion, knocking out Lisowski 10 frames to 9. All 8 matches that were due to start at 11 o'clock are underway. That is our feature match. It's Gary Wilson and Michael White over to Neil Foulds, and I'll be joining him in about 2.34 seconds in the commentary box. Neil, over to you.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Rob, for that. And we're looking at the early shots here with Michael White at the table, Gary Wilson, who made that 147 break. He's actually had 2 tough matches, Gary Wilson. He only won 10-9 against Josh Boylo in the end with the century in the decider, and then he had a 10-7 victory against Peter Lyons after that. So he's not found it very easy to get here. I mean, these are the early point of the exchanges, if you like, of these matches. We'll keep you posted on who wins the first frame of the day. But Michael White, we know, is a fine scorer. And he's won his 2 matches very comfortably. I was looking at his path through, 10-4 victory earlier on against Adita Mehta, and then he beat Ross Muir. So he's actually come through in a breeze in these 2 matches. Not too many players have done that. I'm saying he didn't miss balls like that in winning those matches so easily. That was an absolute sitter that he missed there. So just a little bit of nerves. I'll tell you that obviously those scores need to be updated. That Gary Wilson 8, Michael White 21 is the actual score. We'll get you those sorted out. Send us your questions. Facebook Live, hashtag I Love Snooker. Rod and I will do our very best, won't we, Rob, to update and give all the details we can, and all the info we can on anything you ask us, as long as it's clean, obviously.
Yes, it has to be clean. We've got a few gremlins here. Meanwhile, I'll just give you a quick update on the scores elsewhere. Peter Ebdon's in the balls on a break of 23 in that opening frame against Michael Holt. Zhao Guodong in the very early stages against Mark King. Rod Lawler's on a break of 24 against Jimmy Robertson. So, there is Mark King and Zhao Guodong. Guodong's beaten Tyler Rees 10-2 and Sam Baird 10-4. Remember how well Sam Baird played on his return to the Crucible last year. Really good effort from the Devonian 12 months ago, but Guodong getting the better of him. So remember, if you want to see isolated coverage of Table 2, you can find that on the Eurosport Player. That's Michael Holt against Peter Ebdon. Eurosport Player also have coverage of this table, Table 3. And then when we get our gremlins ironed out, we'll be going back to Gary Wilson against Michael White.
A very good player, I think, Zhao Guodong. He got to the ranking tournament final of... that was the pinnacle of his career, eventually beaten by Ding Junhui in that, but I just think that he's a player that's sure to come again. Been close to winning the shootout twice. It's not really the best yardstick for any player, but you know, it's something that he obviously is able to play quickly and fluently and think quickly. As far as this, it's a totally different story. And I do think he's a fine player, and I think this Mark King has got his work cut out here. That's a nice shot to play round 2 cushions and miss everything and play on that loose red.
Do you know what, Neil? I can't look at Mark King nowadays without thinking of that amazing, really emotional speech in Belfast. It's been a fascinating season in terms of the number of players who've come out and won major events, but that for me so far is one of the standout moments of the season. It was an incredible story and a great moment that encapsulated all that's great about snooker.
I think that and Anthony Hamilton winning in Germany, they were the two for me. I couldn't split those, but I agree with you. I was on commentary in that match with Barry Hawkins, with David Hendon, and I think that is the best match I've commentated on for years. It was brilliant, the atmosphere. Now you see, playing with a lot of pace is the reason he missed that. I don't know how he was going to get the Reds open. But you'd think, if you're going to say, someone going to say, well, you're going to commentate on one of the best matches you've ever been involved in, it would probably be O'Sullivan and Trump. But it wasn't. It was Barry Hawkins, Mark King, and it was just a brilliant evening and a great atmosphere. So we're staying on this table for the time being. There's always going to be something we can watch. That's the beauty of it, Rob, isn't it? There's so much going on. There's always going to be something we can get our teeth into.
Yes, we're not going to be short of drama over the next couple of days. That is absolutely certain. And last night, fabulous 5-ton Fergal finished at the, well, slightly late time of 2:30 in the morning. 5-ton Fergal returns later on today.
When you say 5 tons, I don't think that was yesterday, but I know which match you're talking about. It was earlier in the season, the UK Championships, wasn't it?
That's right.
There was not any 5 tons last night. It was pretty. It was pretty
attritional.
Yeah, you had sort of X-rated stuff, but he got through, and the good news for him is that he wasn't on the early today. You know, on the 11 o'clock, having finished at 2:30, whatever, because you can't get to sleep very easily after all of that. And he probably is having a little snooze now with any luck, because it gets even more difficult. So, yep, 5-ton Fergal.
It's a nickname that's going to stick, I'm afraid. It was a great moment for him at the UK Championship.
I don't think he minds. That people have been called worse. He's playing as well as ever, actually. So Mark King, look, I don't know if he can get to that red on the right here. No, he's playing with a little bit of swerve. I mean, you don't know where the balls are going to finish playing that shot, but what else could he do? He will make things very difficult for Xiao Guodong, even if Xiao Guodong is hitting the ball better than Mark. Mark is an extremely tough man to play. He can be quite hostile out there. You know, he uses everything that he's got, which is fair. You know, everything that he's got. He has a little word, gets a little bit angry, does all of that, but it's a tough old game, snooker. So now we're going to head back to Gary Wilson, Michael White. They're in the opening frame still. Michael White, as you were walking in, Rob, missed the easiest red to the left middle you could ever wish to see, and he looked like he was away, and it's kind of just put him on the back foot since then.
Gary Wilson came through that tense deciding frame thriller against Josh Boylou. He started that match like a steam train. The 147. He raced to a 5-frame advantage and then got dragged back all the way to 9 apiece. Then he beat Peter Lines as well. One of 11 men by our reckoning. We've consulted the legendary Snooker Almanac. One of 11 men in this last round of 32. Never to have appeared at the Crucible before. And it's always such a special reception for the debutants when they walk out for the first time. Crowd really responds to that moment and they respect what a big deal it is for the player and all his family. I certainly always enjoy introducing debutants. It's a really special moment for everybody in the arena. not least of which the player themselves. Michael White just taking his time here. I was reading on a World Snooker website nearly, said his opponents so far have been steady against him. Aditya Mehta 10-3 and Ross Muir 10-4, and he feels as though maybe he's coming back to a little bit of form. It's been a while since he won in India, and you know, he's had a great run at the Crucible on his debut to make the quarterfinals. Good pot to right middle there, but it hasn't been a great season so far for him this year, has it?
Well, he gets a bit nervous, I think, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you don't end up, really struggling to the point where it gets in the way. And nerves can be a good thing, but a little bit anxious, maybe that's the right way to describe it. I think he's a really good player, and I'm sure we'll be back. He's one of the few players that have won these two matches, as you mentioned there, by the scorelines you gave, very comfortably. Because along the lines, most of these guys have had a few wars, even to get this far. Rod Lawler's won the first frame of the day. You could have had some odds on that. Not to be on ability, but how quickly he's won it. He's 1-0 up over Jimmy Robertson. So that's the first frame on the board. Peter Ebden's won the other frame. Goodness me. Well, those two winning the first two frames of the day, I'd have given you any price. But they're both playing well, and they're both playing fairly fluently for them.
Just an update. Luca Bracel on 41, but Dominic Dale's at the table and closing that deficit. There is the spaceman.
It would mean a lot to him, wouldn't it, the spaceman, to be at the Crucible again. I know that. He's such a lover of the game, Rob, isn't he? That he's the kind of guy that just likes to soak it all up.